Good morning, class. This is Jeremy Berger with Polar Bear Pottery, and today we're going to get started working with clay. Now, to get started, we're going to need a few things. First, our bag of clay. Bags of clay come in about 25-pound blocks to a box. When you're purchasing your clay, it's very important to make sure that you understand what you are purchasing. Clay comes in a variety of different types. Specifically, you will find that there are 3 types of clay. Porcelain, which is the white fine clay, stoneware, which is a high fire clay, and earthenware, which is considered a low fire clay. For today's class, we're going to be using Cone 6 mid-fire white, which is a white stoneware. Along with that, we're going to need a wire tool to cut the clay. We're going to need a scale to weigh out the clay, and we're going to need a surface to work on. Let's get started now, shall we? Now that we have our piece of clay, I like to work on a piece of plaster, a large piece of cast plaster. If you don't have that available, you can use a piece of drywall that you tape up. Just remember, if the drywall breaks or you start to get plaster in your clay, it's very important to throw that away. The other thing you can always use, if you don't have that available, is you can use a bat. This is simply a bat that you would use to throw a piece of clay on the pottery wheel. They do have these little holes here for bat pins. That's what's going to hold it onto the wheel. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But for our purposes today, I'm going to use my wedging surface. Now, wedging is the process of getting air out of the clay and making it uniform. Without wedging, our projects have a good chance of having large air bubbles or chunks of clay, hard chunks, things that we don't want in our clay, especially when we're working on the wheel. The other nice thing about this surface here, a plaster surface, is if we mess up on a piece or we get wet clay coming off the wheel, the plaster will actually help to absorb some of that moisture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of clay. You notice I took off my rings, any jewelry that you don't want to get dirty, put someplace safe. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of clay. I like to just kind of throw it down a couple times to start out. Now, just like kneading dough, I'm going to wrap my hands around the clay like this. I'm going to push forward. You can kind of see it makes almost a face. It's going to roll back on itself. Forward, back, just like this. This really does help to work out any air bubbles, any hard chunks that might be mixed into your clay, or any other challenges that you might run into. Now notice, as I wedge, I'll wedge a little bit one direction. I'll pick it up, slam it down. So the area that I was wedging is now going this way. And I'll wedge it again. There's no set rule on how much wedging should be done. Some artists are going to wedge clay a lot. Some are going to wedge just a little bit. It's all personal preference. You'll find what works best for you when you get on the wheel. If you're finding a lot of air bubbles, then you probably want to wedge some more. Alright, once that's done, I'll take my ball of clay. I'll pick it up. And just form it into a ball. Now we have our piece of clay ready to work on the pottery wheel.